She was literally at the top of her game, and she still had more to give. And there were more stories planned, and there was bigger and better to come. And it was snuffed out like that.
In Donegal, away from Derry and Cregan, away from it all, Sara Canning is now ready to talk.
I mean, it's been almost 3 weeks. I've not come to terms with it. I still expect to hear from her every morning. I expect to wake up beside her, and I don't.
It is Easter, Holy Thursday. Teenagers too young to remember the Troubles are rioting after a police raid in Derry's Cregan estate.
The phone was out, she was clicking, she was texting, she was ringing. She'd gone into reporter mode. We were only there in total 8 minutes. I mean, that's the police have told us from the minute we arrived to the minute it happens, it's 8 minutes.
8 minutes?
8 minutes. Well, initially, Lyra was clumsy, and I thought she tripped over her own feet. And I looked down, and I knew straight away that she hadn't tripped. And then I noticed that she had a headwind, and I put my hand to it and started screaming for help.
People know who did this. People know who was involved. They are, it seems, being protected, probably by people who are intimidated. What was your message to these people?
It was so indiscriminate. There was no regard for human life. Why are we protecting that? You know, and if it's your child, I'd be ashamed to have a child that had done that. I'd be ashamed. You know, they took away an amazing person. I've lost the person that I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. You know, we'd planned, well, as we said, we were supposed to get engaged today in Central Park. Like, we'd planned the rest of our lives together. And in one split second, some idiot with a gun took that away. And then the mealy-mouthed apologies and backtracking and just absolutely pathetic statements that were issued by Sara and the new IRA. You know, you can't apologise for killing someone. You can't call it an accidental shooting. You fire a gun at a crowd. That's not an accidental shooting. You're aiming to shoot someone.
Defending their community from Crown forces, quote unquote.
I mean, it's ridiculous. They're not defending anyone. They're literally a scourge on their communities.
Scourge?
They're a scourge. They are a scourge. What I would say is, and this might be heavy-handed and people might speak out against it or whatever, but I don't really care. They are grooming young men and women. They're no better than, they speak out about like paedophile gangs. They're no better than paedophiles. They literally take young people who are disenfranchised at the best of times, who are living in poverty, who don't see a future for themselves in Northern Ireland because there is literally very little here for them. And they tell them that the way forward is a gun in their hand. The way forward is never a gun in your hand.
So by the time of Lyra's funeral in Belfast, yes, Sara was angry at the dissidents, but she was angry at the politicians too.
I think at that stage I kind of had looked at who was in the room, and I kind of saw red a little bit. So when I was speaking to Lyra McKee, I kind of said, you know, you need to facilitate these people sitting down at a table. I said, I'm putting my trust in you. You're a world leader, and you have a presence here. You need to use it for good. So when I turned from Lyra McKee, it was Karen Bradley, and
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, and I thought, when am I ever going to have this opportunity again? You know, no one's going to tell me what I can and can't say at this point, because I've literally just lost the love of my life. She's been murdered, and the inactivity of these people has in no small part led to the rise in these groups. Karen Bradley offered her condolences. I accepted them graciously, and I wasn't rude, but I did tell her that, you know, she was doing a pretty terrible job as a Secretary of State. Her lack of knowledge around Northern Ireland was appalling. She needed to go and educate herself. How on earth she had taken a job where she had no knowledge of the area.
And she stood there and took it?
Do you know, she was very gracious, I have to say. She nodded and she agreed with me that yes, she had said things that were completely misguided, and she'd gone and educated herself.
Bloody Sunday and so forth.
Well, as a Derry woman, I had to say to her, you know, to offer your condolences on Lyra when you have turned around and said that soldiers who indiscriminately opened fire in the Bogside on Bloody Sunday were doing their job in a dignified manner. I said, they're no different to the thug that opened fire in Craigan on Holy Thursday and shot Lyra.
Just the record, we should make it clear that Karen Bradley's, of course, apologised on that day.
Oh yeah, no, she did, and she did.
Doing that, but
yeah.
One Taoiseach, one Secretary of State, one Prime Minister was next.
So I basically told her that she was massively derelict in her duties to Northern Ireland, and successive governments have. It's not just been the Tory government. I told her that to tell us that issues like gay marriage and abortion rights are a devolved matter is completely out of order. We're not a devolved state anymore. We're completely unsuccessful. It has been shown that we can't work together, so the British government has to be our government, and they have to be our voice, and they have to do better. So that was basically the message that I left with the Prime Minister.
Well, you weren't the only one, of course, that day with anger inside your soul. And Father McGill's extraordinary words, which built minute by minute, paragraph by paragraph, to that extraordinary crescendo.
I commend our political leaders for standing together in Craigan on Good Friday. I am, however, left with a question. Why, in God's name, does it take the death of a 29-year-old woman with her whole life in front of her
I was the first on my feet, I think. I'm pretty certain I was the first on my feet. And when I applauded, I stood up and I turned my entire body and I looked to the seats to my right and I looked at the politicians sitting there.
Talks began again yesterday to somehow restore power sharing to Northern Ireland after 2 years, a process galvanised by Lyra McKee's violent death.
What would you like that, your words today and Father McGill's, to contribute to getting politics back on track here? What do you want?
What I want is the leaders of the parties, they want broadly the same things. There are red lines, and I think we need to look beyond red lines at the minute. You know, same-sex marriage and an Irish Language Act are important. They are important, don't get me wrong. But what's more important is having a working government who are doing what's right for the people of Northern Ireland, because we've been left adrift. You know, and there's people missing out in operations, and there's schools missing out in funding. There's head teachers having to go and buy toilet roll for their primary schools because they don't have the funds to do that. Horrible things.
As it happened, we met the very day she and Lyra should have been far away across the Atlantic in New York in Central Park.
She had planned a really elaborate proposal at a lake house on the lake in Central Park, which one of her best friends, Kelsey, had helped to plan. They had a PDF file and everything. They'd gone really like minute detail. It was incredibly romantic, and you know, she was such a thoughtful person. She put her heart and soul into everything for everybody. You know, she was always making sure that people were okay and wanting to make everything as perfect as she could. And she was really good at planning. She wasn't great at keeping things a secret, but she was great at planning.
Instead, it is Derry. Sara Canning and Lyra's friends recently planting red hands, symbolising blood, on the office of a political group close to the new IRA. They will not be cowed, silenced or intimidated.
I don't even want to call them men, because they're not men. They're less than that.
You've spoken out and they've tried to shut you down.
Oh yeah, I mean, they've tried to shut us down with bully boy tactics, and it's pathetic. We're strong women and we're not afraid anymore. And that's a thing that I'm seeing from the people at Derry. The message that needs to go across. People don't want to live in fear anymore. People don't want to live like that anymore.
Lyra's legacy.
Lyra's legacy should be that we don't have to live in fear. I mean, lots of people would like Lyra's legacy to be same-sex marriage being legalised, and that would also be fantastic. You know, but I think we're taking baby steps here. And baby steps are important, especially in Northern Ireland, because usually it's glacial. So if we're taking baby steps, at least it's moving somewhere with some momentum.
You're damn right.
You know.
Sara, thanks very much indeed.
No problem.